It's the hormone that drives motivation, yet most people don't really talk about it or even think about it. Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. All right, let's get straight into it today. I am talking about hormones. Now, this came up a little while ago. I read Dr. Anna Lemke's book called Dopamine Nation. I was doing a bit of study on dopamine because what I found personally was that I would work really, really hard and burn out. Now, I thought that it had a lot to do with adrenaline and running off of adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is the hormone, I guess, that makes us feel good, feel energetic, feel alive. So, I was just doing some research because I really wanted to find why I kept burning out and how to start to manage it more effectively. What I also found was that when I would burn out, I would binge eat a shitload of food and it wasn't making me feel good about myself. I was tired, I was burnt out. Now, back when I was younger, I used to drink a lot. I'd party pretty hard. Never did drugs, so I've never touched any drugs. Still haven't. That's not my thing. But I used to drink a lot. And when I say a lot, I used to drink 5 nights a week until I got myself absolutely obliterated, which used to get me in a bit of trouble. And apparently I had fun, but I can't remember much of it. So it's interesting when people say, you ask them how their weekend was and they're like, oh, I got smashed. It was great. And I'm like, how do you even remember what you did? I don't remember what I did when I was that drunk. But what used to happen was I would drink in order to feel confident. I would use stimulants to get myself pumped up and then go out. So I would start drinking things like Red Bull and vodka. And then all of a sudden I'm crashed, I'm burnt out, I'm beating the crap out of myself. I feel horrible about myself. I feel like I'm a piece of shit. I feel like I'm not going to achieve anything. And so I've had these cycles going on most of my life. Now, my dad is very much the same, and so is my grandmother. So there's almost like a family history of overwork and then burnout, and then overwork and then burnout. And my grandmother, her self-destructive method was when she would burn out, she would eat a lot. So she had diabetes and a whole bunch of other health issues. And then I grew up seeing my dad do the same, where he worked 2 jobs. He would get home from work, eat a couple of packets of 2-minute noodles or whatever was in the cupboard. And normally it was sort of semi-naughty food. And then he passes out on the couch, wakes up, and then he's back into work again. And then he would have a couple of beers and then he would relax and then he'd do the same thing. And on the weekend, he'd go through stages of burnout and so on. So anyway, for me, it was important to try to fix this habit or break this pattern of behavior. And because obviously I work in human behavior, I started studying hormones and hormonal responses because I thought it has a fair bit to do with probably adrenaline, cortisol, the stress hormones. And a doctor told me when I was about in my early 20s that I had chronic fatigue. And I remember the doctor saying you'll never have the energy of a normal person. Now, my response in my own head was, fuck that. And I just left there and never went back. And from there, I cleaned up my diet. I started slowing down my drinking. I started reducing my caffeine and my sugar intake. And it helped quite a lot. In fact, cleaning up my diet helped quite a lot with, I guess, what you could call chronic fatigue. But then what I realized was that after studying a lot of mindset, the brain uses the majority of the body's energy throughout the day, right? Or glucose anyway, I should say. And so the brain just sucks up the glucose that we have. For most of you who are listening to this, are just on all the time, like you're dialed in from the moment you wake up till the moment you go to bed. Because of that, we're running that thing flat out. And it's almost like where you have lots of tabs open on your computer and you can start to hear the fans kick in because it's getting hot. Your brain is a bit like that as well, although we don't have a fan method. We use our blood vessels and blood flow and stuff like that to try to cool us down, and we sweat and so on. But anyway, my point is that most of you are maxed out. You're working hard or you're overworking and you'll keep pushing yourself until you burn out. Most of you will be using stimulants. Some of you who are listening to this will be using drugs, especially things like cocaine. I mean, methamphetamines is a slightly different path, but you can still feel good on it and everything like that. But it's probably to keep up your energy levels because you're addicted to having high energy. And so when you have high energy and you need to keep it up and you start feeling burnt out, you then go and seek out more energy again. So whether you turn to caffeine, Red Bull, Monster energy drinks, whether it's some form of drug, and then working hard makes you feel good. So you're motivated consistently. So anyway, I started studying about the hormonal system and I came across dopamine. And I started studying it a lot more. And from a hormonal perspective, it's really the motivation chemical. It's what motivates us to be stimulated by reward. Now, interestingly enough, when you study dopamine, there's a lot of studies that show that dopamine is actually higher when we think about it or when we're chasing something than when we actually get it. So I don't know about you, but sometimes you want to order naughty food. And the process that you go through of ordering the food and it coming is a lot better than when you actually eat it. And when you eat it, you're just like, whatever, and you're just plowing it down. It's the process that you go through that makes you feel good. And then afterwards, normally you feel like shit. The same when you buy stuff online or when you gamble. It's normally the process that makes you feel good. It's not the thing itself. Same as when you buy things. It's the process of buying it that makes you feel good, like the wanting, not the having. So anyway, I start studying dopamine, and I came across Anna Lemke's work, and she wrote a book called Dopamine Nation. It's absolutely fascinating. It's fantastic. I probably need to go back through and read it again. But I wanted to share today because I know so many of you are consistently chasing stimulation. Like you're someone who probably can't switch off. You're probably dialed in all the time. You may be using stimulants. You may be using some form of drugs. Or you're just naturally stressed out all the time. You get frustrated and your emotions drive your behavior quite a lot. That can be dopamine craving. So again, it's the chasing of motivation and pleasure. Now, the problem with that though is that if you look at Dr. Anna Lemke's research, what it shows is that we have this baseline. It's sort of like a midpoint. So if you imagine a graph, and in the middle of the graph, you have the midpoint. You're not high dopamine, but you're not low dopamine. You're not over-motivated and overstimulated, but you're not understimulated. There's this curve that we all go through. Now, during the day, let's say we're slightly motivated, we've got motivation, ambition, and then we get home from work and we can wind down and we switch off and we go to bed and then we do the same thing the next day. We have this more balanced approach to dopamine. And so what can happen though is that some of you, which is what I was doing, was I would be motivated and then I'm like, right, I'm going to go get a coffee. So I would have a double shot or a 2-shot Americano out of an espresso machine. I love making my own coffee at home. And so I'm having my coffee. About 2 hours later, I'm like, you know what? I just feel like another coffee again. I'm sort of feeling, a little bit flat. Let's go again. And so then I'm jacking myself up for the second time. So now I'm 4 shots in of coffee for the day. And then probably after lunch, I ate lunch, start to feel a little bit tired after lunch, bit chilled out. I need another coffee. So then I would go and grab another coffee. So now I'm 6 shots in for the day. For 4, 5, 6 days, I would be going hard. I would get so much work done. I'm running around like a crazy cat. I'm plowing through work. I'm getting heaps of shit done. I feel motivated. I feel stimulated. Find it super hard to switch off at nighttime. Brain's going crazy. But anyway, the first couple of nights, I have a great sleep. Then as the week goes on, I start getting more and more tired, a bit more lethargic. My sleep debt's starting to wind up more. So I use 2 sleep trackers. I have a Garmin sports watch, and then I also have a Whoop as well. And so, looking at my week, I would notice that my sleep's starting to drop, but the sleep debt is starting to build. And then normally as the weekend comes, or even halfway through the second week, I just start feeling unmotivated. I'm tired. I feel like shit. I can't be bothered doing anything, but I've got this massive workload. And so I'm going, man, what do I need to do? And now I'm like 3 double shot long blacks or 3 double shot Americanos. I'm into my day, still not motivated. I'm like, fuck, what do I need? I know what I need to do. I need to order a pizza and Uber Eats, and I just need to chill a little bit. So then I'm sitting on the couch and I'm ordering Uber Eats. Now I don't just order a small pizza. I'm going to order a large pizza and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to eat the garlic bread. Then after that, I would feel guilty and I would just rest for the rest of the day. Then the next morning I wake up and I want to try to get motivated and I'm still flat and I'm still tired and I can't be bothered. But now I feel like shit and I'm bloated and I hate myself and I was just feeling like crap, but then I got to get stuff done. So I'm drinking more coffee and I still can't get motivated. And now I'm finding myself scrolling through social media for like 3 or 4 hours. And now I'm getting more frustrated and more pissed off with myself and I'm starting to feel depressed and I'm starting to feel down and the coffee's not working. I know what I need to do. I need to buy more food. So then I get on Uber Eats and now I'm ordering chocolate and all this sort of shit in order to try to get motivated again. What was actually happening was I had dropped below baseline. So because I had a high for the start of the week, so normal baseline ranges of dopamine, as this starts to peak or starts to come up because of the coffee consumption at the start of the week, I'm feeling great because I had the weekend off. After having 3 days of feeling like shit and feeling down and beating myself up and feeling a bit depressed and a bit flat, now all of a sudden, I've had 3 days off. I'm cranking again. 3 shots of coffee. I'm going hard. I'm pushing. Now, you got to remember, I did this for a week. So now I'm massively overstimulated for 4, 5, 6, 7 days. Now the crash is happening. But I'm not just crashing down to 0. I'm crashing below the midline. So my levels of dopamine are below normal. And so now I'm feeling flat, tired, down, can't be bothered doing anything. I'm oversleeping. I just feel crap about everything. So I kept going through these cycles until I really started studying Anna Lemke's book and reading a lot about dopamine. And then what I realized is that you need to have rest. And rest is important. For someone like me, I'm high energy, I'm intense. Most of you know, like if you've met me before, I have naturally just high energy. I'm an intense person. But now what's happening is I'm overstimulated and I'm going harder. And so like my energy is through the fucking roof and I don't need to sleep. So I'm just working. I can run on 3, 4 hours sleep a night. I'm pushing hard, wake up in the morning, bang, I'm on again. And for most of my team, I can outperform most of them just in one day. Like I can do more work than most people in one day than what they can do in 3 or 4. But what was happening was I was overstimulated and I wasn't taking into consideration the crash afterwards, which is like 3 days of doing nothing. But when that happened, it made me feel like shit and feeling more depressed and feeling down. And so I would naturally use things like food or buying shit online. I don't gamble or anything like that, so that's never been a problem or anything like that. But I would go and I would start shopping more online, and I'm buying things because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a dopamine release. I'm trying to get my fix again, just like any drug addict. Except my drug is dopamine. So what I had to realize was that I had to be a bit more balanced. And to be a bit more balanced, like I know some of you right now listening to this and going, shit, that sounds like me. Like I go through this cycle as well where I'm overworked and then I'm burning out. Really, burnout is dopamine. It's not having enough dopamine. So you're dropping below the balance line. That's giving you feedback. So, right, how do we balance this back out? These are some of the things that have helped me. Having more sleep. So getting a little bit more sleep. Being very careful of stimulants. So I wouldn't recommend having a massive Monster energy drink in the morning, then having, a whole bunch of caffeine like a Red Bull or something like that at lunch, then a couple of coffees. If you do that, you will melt down and burn out. Now, the other way around that is you just keep drinking more and more and more Red Bull and caffeine until eventually your body just calls it quits and you disintegrate. And that's what happened to me. I used to drink Red Bull and vodka every night when I would go out. And I'd be out till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I wake up in the morning, have a coffee, drag my ass out of bed, get to work. And then the next second I'm drinking Red Bulls all day. Nighttime comes around, back out Red Bull vodka. A couple of years later, chronic fatigue. Not a great idea, right? Not a great idea at all. Now, I'm not saying that that's what caused it, but I'm saying that there's a correlation there between that. There's definitely a correlation. To be honest, I haven't drank Red Bull since. But these are some of the things that work for me. So first of all, balancing out your sleep a little bit more, knowing that you don't have to work until midnight and then get up early the next morning and go again, just trying to balance it out just a little bit more. Now, again, I'm an intense person, so I don't need as much sleep as the average person, but I do need times of sleep. So there are weekends and stuff where I'll pretty much sleep most of Saturday. I'll just wake up. I might wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll watch some TV. I fall back asleep for a couple of hours. I wake back up again, fall back asleep again. And then normally by that nighttime, I'm feeling pretty good, have a full night's sleep. And then by Sunday, I'm ready to rock and roll again. I feel really, really good. So sleep will definitely help. Making sure that you're being very careful with stimulants. The half-life of caffeine is around about 6 hours, depending. There's variations in research, but it's about 6 hours. So let's just say, and I'm just going to use round numbers, let's say you had 100 milligrams of caffeine at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By 9 p.m. at night, you still have 50 milligrams of caffeine in your blood. That's going to make it harder to get to sleep. Now, if you think about it again, the half-life of, if we say 50 milligrams, by 3 a.m. in the morning, you're still at 25 milligrams. So you're still a bit stimulated. So sleep's going to be affected depending on how much caffeine you have. Having one coffee in the morning is probably not going to make a big difference. But if you're having double shots like I was, and then you're drinking Red Bulls, and then you're going out and having more Red Bull and a coffee before bed, you're probably just absolutely destroying yourself. You'll probably end up sick at some point. And most of you have done this before. I've done this before where you go on holidays. I actually had this in Bali earlier this year, where I got to Bali. I was busy. I had heaps of work on. And so I was working while I wasn't in Bali on holidays. And then we finally went to a really nice resort. So we went to the Kempinski. And when we got there, I was like, cool, I'm going to have a couple of days just to chill out. First day I started chilling out, bang, sore throat, started getting a cold, nose is running, feel like shit. I'm just tired. I'm getting vitamin drips. I'm sleeping all the time. That's because when you're under stress, your immune system winds itself up. So it becomes more active. It becomes more hyperactive when you are stressed. So if you've got a lot of stress and you're running off of adrenaline and you're pushing hard and you're working a lot, your immune system is cranking. It's working. It's going. But the moment that you start to rest, boom, it kicks back in and out you go. You get wiped out. So it's almost like your immune system having a bit of a reset. Although it doesn't reset itself, it's going back into homeostasis or back into balance. And so that's the reason why a lot of people get sick when they go to holidays, for that exact reason. That's something that you've got to be aware of. But that's normally due to a crash after overstimulation. So for me, good sleep. The next thing is breathing. When we breathe out, so when we take deep breaths out, what that does is it helps us to relax more. And you'll know this because if you've ever been stressed and you're frustrated, you go, and you have this long, deep exhale. That's you trying to unconsciously balance out your autonomic nervous system or balance out your emotional system. Now, we're trying to do that to bring us back into what's known as a parasympathetic response. The sympathetic nervous system is the flight, fight, and freeze. Now, when we think about fighting, which is running away from things, or freezing and standing still, it's normally under a challenge or under a threat. You get told if there's a bear or a snake, stand still. That's a natural fear response that humans have from large amounts of stress, or a fear response. So if you're fearful and you're overworking and you're worried about money, you're worried about not achieving as much, not accomplishing as much, then you're naturally going to overwork because fear is driving your behavior and you're using stress as a stimulant to drive you. That's the sympathetic response, flight, fight, and freeze. And so we start to have things like an increase in adrenaline, in cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and also insulin, which allows our body, I guess you could say for glucose regulation, it allows us to regulate our sugar levels in our blood. So under stress, we have that system. But normally at nighttime, we switch over and we go into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest, repair, digest. So when we're resting, we're repairing and we're digesting. So if you're stressed and you're eating, over time you can start to get more bloating, you can start to have more food intolerances because your digestive system doesn't work properly. You can find that you can go through stages of constipation or diarrhea, and that can happen as well just because your digestive system doesn't know how to regulate itself. But we need to shift into that parasympathetic state to relax more. If we don't shift into it enough, we're not having about a 50-50 split throughout our 24-hour time period where we're working hard and pushing hard and then resting hard and repairing hard. So over time, you are going to have a crash. And that crash is essentially you're balancing yourself out, but you have to drop below baseline because you're above baseline for a long period of time and you're above what is normal. You're above what is, you're going too hard. And so eventually you're going to crash. You need to dial it back a little bit. Now we can do that by breathing. So when we take long, deep exhales, it allows us to go back into the parasympathetic system. If you breathe long, deep inhales, it makes us more sympathetic and more stressed. So if you need to wake up, taking deep breaths in. If you do that, you'll start to feel stimulated. If you take long, deep breaths out, you'll start to feel more tired and relaxed. So if you have trouble sleeping, long exhales helps. If you have trouble waking up, long inhales or fast inhales help. So breathing is an important factor throughout your day. You can use your breathing to start to balance out those nervous systems, the autonomic nervous system, which is your flight, fight, and freeze, sympathetic nervous system, or your parasympathetic nervous system, rest, repair, digest. By doing that, you can then self-regulate a little bit more, bring dopamine back in balance, get a better sleep, and now you're probably not going to crash as hard. Throughout the day, something that I find that's really important, and I've been doing this for I've been doing this since I was a little kid. I normally have power naps in the afternoon. And what I didn't realize is now there's scientific data and scientific research to show that it helps balance out dopamine. That when you have these power naps or these rests, even if you just lie down on the ground, sort of doze off a little bit, or you just have some time where you're meditating or just doing some breath work, not stimulating breath work, but more parasympathetic or balanced breath work. And balanced breath work is 5 seconds inhale, 5 seconds exhale, 5 seconds inhale, 5 seconds exhale. Now, if you do that for a while, what you'll find is that you're starting to regulate yourself a lot more effectively. And just by having a small break throughout the day, 30 to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know the exact research on it and the exact data on it. But what I do know is by having afternoon power naps or just relaxing a little bit, you'll find that you're bringing dopamine back in balance so you don't crash as hard. It's just something to think about anyway. And then just reducing the stimulants, reducing the stress. This is why it's so important for business owners and entrepreneurs or leaders, managers, people that, even if you're a leader in your own family, you have to make sure that you manage your energy. Energy is culture. Energy is life. If your energy is low, life will feel dull and dim. If your energy is high, life will feel great and exciting, which is the reason why people turn to drugs, because you've had a busy week, you're starting to get burnt out, you do a bunch of lines on the weekend, and now all of a sudden you're stimulated, the weekend feels great, but then now you've crashed. You crash on Monday and now you start to feel tired, you feel shit about yourself, you start feeling depressed. That's because that dopamine has crashed. So what we want to do is throughout the day, we want to manage our energy more effectively, and we want to manage our energy throughout the week more effectively. You'll hear me consistently talking about energy, but energy is life. If you lose your energy, you lose your life force. If you lose your energy enough, you'll die. Your body just can't run. It can't operate anymore. In fact, that's the aging process, right? Is that things start to break down and our energy starts to break down and so on. Then if we look in nature, you can go right down to quantum physics and everything is energy, right? It's the ability to do work. That's what energy is. It's the ability to do work. So energy goes right through fields of science. They talk about energy in cosmology. They talk about energy in physics. They talk about energy in chemistry. They talk about energy in biology. So life is energy. If you don't have energy, you don't have life. So if your energy starts to drop, life starts to drop off as well. It's just something to think about, Driven Mofos. If you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate and review this episode. We've got, I think, over 500 episodes now. So it's like 530 episodes. And we have only about 150 or 160 4- or 5-star ratings on this podcast. It only takes 2 or 3 seconds to rate this podcast and review it on whatever podcasting platform. You just got to go out, click on the Michael Mojo or the Underestimated Entrepreneur, and it will take you to the main page. On the main page, you'll see the star rating there. Just click on the star rating. Hopefully it's a 5. I hope it's a 5 because I spent a lot of time doing this and it's a lot of information that I'm pumping out every day. But what it does, it allows us to get out to more people. It also shows that the podcast is good. There's millions of podcasts coming out every year. Most of them never have more than 4 episodes. So I think at the moment, 4 episodes is the average. I think if you do over 4 podcasts, you're in like the top 20 or top 20% of podcasts because most people just don't do more than 4 episodes. Anyway, Driven Mofos, keep kicking ass, look after yourself, keep resting hard. Remember, energy is life, so make sure you look after your energy. Give yourself the best chance of living a great life by managing your mindset, by managing your body, and just keep pushing hard. Anyway, take care. I'll see you on the next episode. Keep kicking ass. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.